You have seen the thumbnails promising a shredded core in 14 days. It is an incredibly appealing idea that a quick 10-minute floor routine before bed is all that stands between you and a cover model midsection. So you drop to the mat and start doing endless circuits, chasing that deep, burning sensation in your stomach. You push through the fatigue, assuming that localized burn means the fat is melting away. But working a specific muscle does not metabolize the fat cells lying directly above it. Fat loss is systemic, determined by overall energy balance. No amount of localized exhaustion will target your waistline. When we look at the clinical data for safe, sustainable fat loss and muscle hypertrophy, reaching visible core definition takes most people between 8 and 20 weeks of consistent adherence. To actually get the result you want, you have to trade the illusion of a 2-week shortcut for the rigorous discipline of a multi-month systemic process. The aesthetic of a visible core requires two completely distinct physiological adaptations happening at the exact same time. The first path is stripping away the adipose tissue covering the muscle. The second path is increasing the physical size of the muscle underneath. On the fat loss side, the math is rigid. Men generally need to drop to 6 to 12% total body fat, while women need to reach 16 to 20%. Meanwhile, the rectus abdominis requires heavy mechanical tension to thicken its fascial bands and push outward. If your body fat stays too high, your abs stay hidden. If you drop the fat but never apply mechanical tension, your stomach is just flat. You must solve both sides of the equation. A major reason people fail on the hypertrophy side of that equation is because they select exercises with an incredibly low return on investment. Knocking out daily sets of 50 to 100 bodyweight crunches certainly feels difficult, but the load is too light to stimulate true muscle growth. That high repetition approach only pools lactic acid and improves your muscular endurance. It fails to apply the necessary mechanical tension to force the tissue to adapt and grow. On the other end of the spectrum are the purists who insist that heavy compound movements like back squats and deadlifts provide all the core training you need. This chart shows the electromyographic activation, or EMG, of core muscles during a back extension. The tallest bars here represent the high root mean square activation values for the right erector spinae at 0.136 and the left erector spinae at 0.119. Looking closely at these readings, the workload is overwhelmingly concentrated on the back extensors. Heavy compound lifts build incredible posterior chain stability, but result in very poor anterior activation for the rectus abdominis. Neither unweighted endurance crunches nor heavy posterior compound lifts will build the three-dimensional aesthetic of a blocky midsection. To properly target the anterior core, you need top-down and bottom-up isolation movements. This means applying a heavy load directly against the flexion of your spine, using movements like a heavy-weighted cable crunch. EMG data shows that adding cable resistance or performing hanging leg raises produces significantly higher activation of the rectus abdominis compared to bodyweight alternatives. But there is a strict trade-off. These weighted exercises demand flawless execution. If you use momentum or swing your legs, your hip flexors will take over the movement entirely. Because your abs are skeletal muscles, just like your chest or back, hitting them with this level of intensity means they require up to 48 hours of recovery between sessions to repair. Treating the core exactly like your biceps, with heavy resistance, with progressive overload, and scheduled rest, is the only proven way to thicken the fascial bands. Building the muscle is only half the process. The second, more mathematically demanding pillar is stripping away the layer of fat to reveal it. You must maintain a daily deficit of 300 to 500 calories. This specific reduction drives a safe, sustainable systemic fat loss of about half a pound to a full pound per week. To complement that dietary deficit, high-intensity interval training, or HIIT, serves as an optimal, time-condensed cardiovascular tool. Real HIIT requires immense physical taxation. You must push your body to maximum effort for short, explosive bursts to trigger the necessary adaptive responses. Ultra-short protocols, like the 10-minute Vollard regimen or 30-second Wingate sprints, maximize fat oxidation without requiring an hour of steady jogging. This intense nutritional and cardiovascular discipline makes up 80% of the battle. Without it, even the strongest abdominal muscles will remain permanently buried. Before you adjust your routine, you need to diagnose exactly which part of this physiological equation is holding you back. We can map your required protocol by plotting body fat percentage on the y-axis against abdominal muscle thickness on the x-axis. Different body types need entirely different protocols. If you are carrying extra weight, you sit in the high body fat, low muscle quadrant. Alternatively, the skinny fat demographic sits in the quadrant with low overall body fat but flat, underdeveloped muscle thickness. Applying a hypertrophy solution to a nutritional problem or a cardio solution to a hypertrophy problem is the exact reason most people stall indefinitely. For the high body fat viewer, you need to shift 80% of your fitness efforts entirely to managing your caloric deficit and executing your HIIT protocols. The trade-off for this group is clear. Operating in a deficit means less energy for heavy lifting, but that deficit is mathematically required to drop into the target visibility ranges. If you are lean but flat, your prescription is the opposite. Abandon the extra cardio and focus entirely on heavy, weighted flexion isolation exercises 2 to 3 times a week. When you finally intersect low body fat with heavy, blocky muscle hypertrophy, you achieve that deeply defined aesthetic. There are no immediate shortcuts in human physiology. Revealing your core is a calculated biomechanical commitment.